Discover the amazing truth revealed, 7 unexpected ways dragons transformed myths forever. Sarah Jenkins stared at the page filled with flowing script, the ink nearly shimmering as it spoke of dragons that weren't just stories but embodiments of trials. The dusty library around her was her sanctuary, yet, even here, the echoes of her brother's success rang like distant church bells, harsher in resonance. Just last week, he visited wearing his crisp, tailored suit, each button an emblem of achievement she could never seem to capture. She resented that it felt like a weight strangling her aspirations, smothering thoughts of her dreams. Too often, neighbors and family dismissed her as the family dreamer. What a cruel little label. She wanted to scream back at them, to point to the ancient tomes fighting for space on the shelves. They were full of magnificent tales, the mythical dragons, with their fire and strength, drawing her into a world beyond Middle America's conservative values. Yet, the specter of reality quickly returned, wrapping around her like a coiling serpent. With bills piling up and a part-time job barely keeping her afloat, the sweet embrace of dreams seemed cruelly out of reach. In those moments, self-doubt flooded in, whispering that perhaps the world was right. She was destined to fade into the background, unseen and unheard, unlike the soaring legal eagle who filled her family's expectations. Turning back to the manuscript, her heart raced not from fear but the thrill of discovery. The textured parchment seemed to vibrate under her fingertips, each word a pulse as she glimpsed the complexities of her grandfather's life woven through the tales of dragons. He knew poverty, he fought against it. Somehow, the archaic stories mirrored her own looming battles, testing the limits of her resolve. What if these dragons were metaphors for her own struggles? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The thrill receded, replaced by unease as she envisioned the town's skepticism, a place where dreaming too big meant courting ridicule. That fiery ambition she felt when holding the manuscript was paired with the dread of exposing herself to the stigma of failure. She struggled against the tidal wave of familial expectations, her heart beating irregularly at the thought of not living up to Thomas's standards. As Sarah's thoughts spiraled, the weight of what it all meant sat heavy on her chest. What if she dared to challenge the perspectives of a town that saw nothing beyond practicality? In that infinitesimal moment between the pages, she felt a mix of vulnerability and reckless determination. But could she rise, as the dragons once did in her grandfather's stories, and embody something greater than the sum of her doubts? Her resolve faltered. Just as she started to dig deeper into her family's legacy, the tremors of anxiety gripped her. The blaze of uncertainty threatened to ignite, and just like that, disillusionment blurred her vision. Bound by fear and longing to carve her path, she found herself standing at a precipice, heart pounding against chains of expectation. The next choice loomed ominously, daring her. Would she rise from the ash of fear, or succumb to conformity? The answer hung in the balance. Sarah's fingers trembled as she studied the manuscript, the words promising adventures that felt just out of reach. The dragons represented not just mythical creatures, but the very essence of perseverance. Dave, her manager at the library, had often described the importance of storytelling in shaping one's identity. Now, Sarah wondered if she could redefine her own narrative, transcend the labels imposed by others, and confront the dragons of her life. Taking a deep breath, she closed her eyes. What if I allowed my ambitions to take flight? The thought ignited a spark within her, pulsing with possibility. She envisioned herself standing tall, akin to the dragons she so admired, radiating power instead of cowering under the weight of expectation. That moment demanded more than mere contemplation. It demanded action. She rose abruptly from her chair, her heart racing with determination. Perhaps it was time to break free from the constraints of her part-time job and delve into what truly stirred her soul. Adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah began folding the manuscript carefully, a treasure she intended to revisit as she stepped into the unknown. The next day, adorned in an outfit that felt empowering, simple but polished, she stepped into the town's small coffee shop, the familiar sounds of the espresso machine humming like motivational background music. The people here were part of her story, yet she often felt invisible, a mere spectator to lives unfolding around her. But not today. Today, she would spark conversations. Today, she would be seen. "Hi, Sarah!" exclaimed Jenna, a local journalist she often respected but had never boldly approached. "What's new with you?" With a sound she barely recognized as her own, Sarah responded, "I'm actually working on something big." Her voice was steadier than she anticipated. "Oh. What's that?" Jenna leaned in, curiosity lighting her expressive eyes. "I'm considering writing my own stories, exploring local legends and personal experiences," she murmured, testing the waters of possibility. Jenna's smile widened. "That sounds incredibly intriguing. Stories about dragons or your own journey?" "Both, really," Sarah admitted, a flush creeping up her cheeks. "I feel like there's so much power in our narratives, in the myths we carry and share." A spark of genuine interest ignited in Jenna's expression. "I would love to help promote your stories. We could run a series on local legends intertwined with personal journeys. It might resonate with a lot of people." The offer was a gut punch of opportunity, reverberating in her core. Would her ambitions finally see the light of day? Over the next few days, Sarah tossed ideas back and forth with Jenna, enthusiasm transforming her typical mundane library visits into vibrant sessions of brainstorming. She pushed past the wall that had enclosed her for years, sharpening her arguments, outlining her thoughts until they could take flight like the dragons she adored. But within the excitement lurked shadows of doubt. She still faced the scrutiny of her family, particularly Thomas, whose life seemed assured and etched in stone. What would he think? Would he belittle her further? On this battlefield of self-doubt and internal conflict, Sarah questioned whether she could fully embrace her newfound direction or if she'd remain trapped in the shadows of her brother's achievements. Each interaction, each draft, unearthed layers of insecurities, yet she also felt the thrill of progress bubbling just beneath the surface. Suddenly, the time had come. She picked up her phone, hesitation flooding her veins, her thumb hovering over the contact for her brother. Did she dare initiate a conversation that could expose her fragile dreams to judgment? Her heart hammered in rebellion against the resistance coiling in her chest. With a rush of adrenaline, she pressed call, wondering if today would mark the end of self-imposed limitations or merely the beginning of a new conflict, a challenge she had yet to prepare for. As the phone rang, the face of the dragon loomed, a symbol of what she was daring to become. Would she soar, or would the call reveal the flames of familial skepticism instead? The moment of truth was nearing. The call connected, and Sarah's breath hitched in her chest. "Come on, just pick up," she whispered to herself, the sound almost drowning under the rising tide of her anxiety. When Thomas answered, his deep voice felt like a wave crashing over her fragile resolve. "Hey, sis. What's up?" His tone was casual, almost dismissive, oblivious to the battleground raging within her. "Hi, Thomas. I've been working on something interesting," she stammered, again feeling the weight of self-doubt pressing down. Would this be the moment he scoffed? Would he laugh at her ambitions, the way he had so many times in their childhood? "Interesting? Like a new book you're reading?" he asked, a hint of teasing in his tone. "No, not a book," Sarah rushed to clarify. "I'm actually thinking about writing my own stories, local legends, personal experiences," she said, her voice gaining strength as the words slipped out with surprising conviction. There was a pregnant pause on the other side, and in that silence, Sarah's stomach twisted. She could almost hear him processing her declaration. "Wow, really? You've never mentioned that before. Are you sure you're cut out for this?" His skepticism hung like a dense fog. Her heart raced. "What do you mean? Cut out for what?" "Writing. It's a big leap, you know." I mean, Grandma used to tell us those stories about the dragons, but you were always more of a reader than a writer. With every word, she felt the familiarity of old wounds winding their way back to the surface. He was right, she was the one who consumed stories rather than created them. But this was hers to claim, a fire kindling in her chest. I believe I can do it, Thomas. I think there's power in our stories, even the ones we don't often tell, she replied, her voice gaining firmness. The trembling in her fingers turned from fear to a fierce resolve. Sure, but are you really ready to open yourself up like that? What about your job? It's more stable, and that's important. Another jab at stability, her brother's rallying cry for safety. But safety had kept her caged for too long. It's precisely that sense of stability that's held me back. I'm tired of feeling invisible. I want to be seen. A silence followed that felt like an instant eternity. Then, something shifted in his voice. Okay, I get that. But are you ready for the harsh critique? It's not just about storytelling, it's an exposure of who you really are. Her breath quickened as those words hung between them. This was a challenge, but isn't that what she craved? Yes, I want that. I can handle it. His response softened, yet the skepticism lingered. All right, I'm not trying to discourage you. Just be sure you're prepared even if it doesn't go the way you picture. Thanks, I'll keep that in mind, she said, feeling a mixture of relief and rising determination. They ended the conversation amicably, but something had changed within her. For the first time, she felt a flicker of confidence growing to life despite the shadows of doubt. The call had unveiled not just her fears but a quiet tenacity that had long been dormant. The next day, Sarah returned to the coffee shop, sitting at a table in the corner. The bustling environment felt electric under the sunlight streaming through the window. She pulled out her laptop and opened a blank document. The cursor blinked, urging her forward. With each word she typed about local legends, dragons, and intertwining her own journey, she felt the weight of uncertainty slowly melting away. There was an urgency to compose her narrative, a need to outline her adventure against the backdrop of fear and perseverance, yet, mid-typing, a text from Jenna buzzed her phone, jolting her from her flow. Can we meet later? I have a crazy idea. A quick glance around confirmed her surroundings: coffee steam rising, distant laughter echoing. She was ready for whatever awaited her, fueled now by the belief in her own story. But she couldn't shake an unsettling feeling that one more call loomed ahead, this time, with her family again. What if they joined the conversation and challenged her resolve? Would she still hold firm against the urging tides of safety, or could the dragons rise higher? Each step propelled her forward, but she knew the real test awaited just beyond the horizon. The addiction to the blank page had begun to weave its spell around Sarah. Each day spent at the coffee shop transformed her thoughts into living narratives. Her heart raced as she laughed through imaginary conversations with the dragons of her mind, those characters waiting to be born. Yet, shadows loomed in the corners of her imagination, vibrant and menacing: past doubts, the deep-seated fear of ridicule, and her family's inevitable concern. Determined, she set a schedule. Mornings would be for writing, afternoons for jotting down notes on the details of legends, evenings reserved for refining her prose. The structure fed into her newfound confidence, allowing Sarah to craft stories that felt at once personal and universal. But with each successful paragraph, the speculation about familial reactions swirled around her thoughts. What if they find it silly? What if they dismiss my experiences as irrelevant? She knew too well the familiar dynamics that would surface if they delved into her exploration. Following Jenna's text, she felt a tug of curiosity combined with anxiety. The steady tone of uncertainty reminded her that sometimes, the path of growth came with unexpected detours. Would Jenna be the support she needed, or would her idea lead to more confusion? Choosing to unpack her tension rather than carry it, Sarah thumbed a quick reply: "Sure, what's the idea?" The minutes dragged till Jenna responded. They agreed to meet later that afternoon. As she packed up her laptop and closed her eyes for a brief moment, she pictured their conversation. Would Jenna's enthusiasm ignite the spark of creativity even further, or would it add yet another layer to her internal conflict? Moments later, filled with cautious excitement, she stepped into the bright sunlight, her mind racing with thoughts of possibilities. The cafe where they were to meet bubbled with life, laughter, and chatter washing over her like waves. Sarah spotted Jenna almost immediately, her animated gestures painting vivid images even before speaking. "Sarah. I have the craziest concept," Jenna began, barely letting Sarah settle into her seat. "What if we create a podcast about urban legends?" Her eyes glimmered. "Imagine sharing our stories. Yours could connect so many, especially if you take them from page to voice. We could even invite locals to share theirs." A rush of admiration for Jenna's enthusiasm coursed through Sarah, but the tidal wave of panic rushed in right after. "I don't know, Jen, podcasts. That seems super exposed. What if they don't resonate with anyone? It's like I'd be putting my heart out there for everyone to judge." "Yeah, but think about it," Jenna countered, leaning forward. "Your writing holds so much passion. You've lived these tales. The world needs to hear these perspectives. You've got this amazing power to connect, why limit yourself?" Power. That single word hung between them, chewing on her doubts and fears. Sarah's mind spiraled with the close-knit ties to this newfound ambition, the potential paths diverging before her. Suddenly, the coffee shop felt smaller, the weight of choice flooding back in. Was she ready to face the world's scrutiny beyond the page? What if the stories she crafted weren't enough? But deeper still, what if they were exactly what somewhere needed to hear? Taking a deep breath as the potential for creativity washed through her again, she recalled her earlier commitment to her voice. "Okay," Sarah ventured, testing the waters. "I'll think about it. Let us brainstorm. But I'm warning you, I might need some time to warm up to the idea." Jenna grinned, her enthusiasm palpable. "You won't regret it." In that moment, Sarah recognized the gravity of what was unfolding. It wasn't just about writing, it was a challenge to embrace vulnerability both personally and professionally. The ideas whirled in her mind, echoing Jenna's conviction. Perhaps this was it, the push she needed to evolve her narrative beyond the confines of the page. As they chatted, sketches of podcasts swirled, teasing new possibilities with every word spoken. Yet, deep inside, Sarah grappled with a distant anxiety. Was she truly ready for everything that lay ahead, ready to give her audience the true essence of who she was? And as her heart began to race unpredictably, she couldn't shake the feeling that the confrontation waiting on the horizon was not just with her family but with the very essence of her fear. The moment was fast approaching for her to either succumb to the shadows or rise like a phoenix, boldly airing her vulnerability for all to see. Where would this newfound journey take her? The pressure of her family's perception looming closer, threatening to choke her newfound flame. The following days flew by in a blur of brainstorming sessions and late-night planning. Sarah found herself toggling between excitement and anxiety, a thrilling disease that gripped her every thought. Jenna's initial enthusiasm had ignited something in her, an ember that pulsed with a new kind of possibility. Each conversation they had carved deeper pathways into Sarah's subconscious, underscoring her potential to share her stories beyond the written word. As she sat in a cafe, surrounded by the familiar bustle, she realized she had to confront her fears head-on. Jenna had proposed setting a date for their first recording, a time to capture the very essence of the urban legends they held dear. It was an invitation that stirred both desire and dread within Sarah. What if she stumbled over her words? What if her stories fell flat when spoken out loud? With a hot cup of coffee cradled in her hands, Sarah's fingers trembled slightly. "Jenna, have you considered how we'll be received?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if people think my stories are childish or silly? What if my family thinks I'm wasting my time?" Jenna leaned in, her expression serious but reassuring. "You can't control how others perceive you, Sarah, but you can control what you create. Remember, the stories started with you. They've meant something to you, they might mean something to others too. We've just got to dive in." Her words resonated within Sarah, surrounding her like a blanket. The insecurities bubbled incessantly, but a seed of resolve began to emerge. This podcast could serve as a bridge, connecting the fragmented pieces of her life with the stories she had nurtured on those quiet evenings spent alone with her thoughts. She could reimagine the depths of her fears, pouring them into narratives that might resonate. As they delved deeper into plans for their first episode, Sarah discovered layers to her creativity previously unexplored. Cameos of local legends and interviewing unsuspecting residents sparked immense excitement. Each concept she explored shone a light on her penchant for storytelling and rekindled memories of bedtime tales shared in her childhood. The idea began to transform into an exhilarating adventure rather than merely a source of anxiety. Soon, they established a framework for their podcast: the structure, the guests, the types of stories they wanted to share. But the more they planned, the closer Sarah felt to her own vulnerability. She visualized each episode as a dip into her submerged identity, revealing parts of herself she had kept hidden from her family. Would they be there to catch her if she fell, or would they turn their backs, dismissing her ambitions as trifling? The weight of her family's expectations had never felt heavier. With clarity came a sense of urgency, underscoring the stakes. The fear could paralyze her, or it could propel her. To take ownership, Sarah decided it was time to confront one of her greatest fears: her family's reaction. Summoning her courage, she scheduled a dinner with her parents. She planned to speak openly about her podcast, to reveal not only her ambitions but also the fears that gnawed at her confidence. The decision was as daunting as it was liberating. As she set her plans into motion, Sarah's heart pounded with each passing day, paired with an exhilaration she had not felt before. The night approached, and a storm of conflicting emotions swirled within her. Could she express this aspect of herself without faltering? Would they embrace her newfound passion, or would old judgments resurface, suffocating her budding spirit? On the eve of dinner, Sarah stared at her reflection in the mirror, contemplating the woman before her. Was she truly ready to embrace the fullness of who she was, her dreams, her fears, her narratives, and share that with those who had watched her grow? Or would the shadows of doubt snuff out the flame in its earliest flickers? The moment of confrontation was nearing, and with it came the realization that her journey was becoming not just about stories, but about reclaiming herself. But unseen to her, the phone buzzed with a new message, unearthing yet another layer of uncertainty. What if Jenna had reached out? Or was it someone's opinion on her podcast, an opinion that could change everything? The warm glow of the dining room enveloped Sarah as she entered her parents' home, yet the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken tension. Each step magnified the thudding of her heart, the echo of her thoughts swirling in a tumultuous dance of self-doubt. Tonight was supposed to be a step towards authenticity, an offering of her true self, yet she felt rooted to the spot. Her mother stood at the stove, stirring a pot, a familiar picture of domestic continuity. "Sarah, you're just in time. I made your favorite," her mother said, her voice bright but somehow distant. It was meant to be comforting, but it only reminded Sarah of the expectations and traditions that felt like shackles. "Thanks, Mom," Sarah managed, forcing a smile as she took a seat at the table. Her father entered moments later, his tired eyes instantly scrutinizing. For years, she had fought to secure his approval, but this time felt different. She couldn't hide from herself anymore. As they settled into their usual patterns, talk of work, weather, and trivial updates, Sarah wrestled with the words that fought to escape from within, each one tangled with uncertainty. She imagined explaining the podcast as a mere whim, a hobby that could be discarded at a moment's notice. Yet she felt the tug of truth intensifying, the urge to lay down her burdens in front of them. "Actually, can we talk about something important?" She finally broke the routine, her voice trembling slightly as her mother paused mid-sentence. Her parents exchanged inquisitive looks, expressions morphing from casual interest to concern. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" her dad prompted, leaning forward with a newfound urgency. Taking a deep breath, she quelled the rising tides of fear. "I've started a podcast. It's about urban legends, stories that are dear to me. Jenna is my co-host." The words came tumbling out, each sentence threading her past with her present. Glimmers of excitement sparked as she elaborated on the process, researching, recording, and giving life to the very stories that had shaped her, but as she spoke, she felt their reactions shift. Her mom's brow furrowed, a blend of confusion and disbelief washing over her features. A podcast? What's the point of that, Sarah? Can't you focus on something more stable? The undercurrent of disappointment rang sharply. Sarah's heart sank, burdened by the weight of judgment. Mom, it's not just a hobby. It's my creative outlet. I want to share these stories. She fought to maintain her composure as her father's silence loomed larger, thickening the atmosphere like humidity before a storm. Look, I know this isn't conventional, but it matters to me, she added, forcing confidence into her tone. I've always had stories taking root inside me, and I want to share them with others. Maybe they'll resonate. Her father shifting in his seat as he regarded her with cautious concern. But, what if things don't work out? What then? He questioned, anxiety creeping into his voice, the warning edge of practicality that had shaped so many of their conversations. In that moment, doubt surged anew, wrestling with determination. His words echoed in her mind, causing brief panic that threatened to overshadow her aspirations. Yet she seized the moment, recalling Jenna's encouragement. She had to muster the courage to push forward. I don't know where this path will lead, but I want to find out. I need to at least try. For a heartbeat, silence enveloped the room, an uncomfortable space where Sarah's vulnerability hung in the air, exposed and raw. She took their silence as a challenge, unwilling to let fear drown her resolve. In a flash of bravery, she reached for her phone, pulling up Jenna's text about recording logistics, a reminder of purpose amidst her turmoil. Tomorrow, we're recording the first episode, she said, thrusting her device into view, her thumb hovering over the screen as her breath caught. This is real for me. Moments stretched painfully, and just as she was beginning to brace for disappointment, a flicker of understanding ignited behind her father's gaze. If it matters to you that much, he started cautiously, his voice a softening tide against her resistance. That sliver of acceptance felt significant, and as they wrapped up dinner, bolstered by her tentative triumph, Sarah dared to envision a future marked by her own narrative. It was not merely a longing for approval but a push against the boundaries of who she was expected to be, but as she exited her parents' home, a lurking apprehension took hold. Would her father's hesitant acceptance last? Or would she find herself back amidst the doubts she had battled for so long? As she opened her phone to check for messages again, a new notification blinked, capturing her attention. What awaited her inside that small screen could either propel her forward or land her right back into the storm of insecurity. The uncertainty gnawed at her, igniting a flicker of anxiety that hinted at deeper revelations yet to come. The scroll of new notifications taunted her as she stared at her phone. Sarah's finger hovered over the screen, her heartbeat thrumming in anticipation. Curiosity clawed at her, a traitorous feeling that urged her to delay the diving into her new journey. What if this notification contained the kind of critical feedback that could dismantle the fragile fortress of confidence she had just begun to build? With a summoned breath, she clicked it open. Jenna's message lit up the screen. Can we chat? I've got some amazing ideas for the intro. The urgency of the message tugged at her mind, promising the momentum she needed before the impending recording. Sure. I'm heading home now, she typed back, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The drive felt elongated, though it was scarcely 15 minutes. Thoughts ricocheted within her, spinning tales of potential triumph yet laced with shadows of failure. What if Jenna's ideas overshadowed hers? What if she lost her footing before the first episode even aired? As she pulled into her driveway, Sarah reined in her scattered thoughts, consciously battling against the waves of anxiety. She had taken the leap, now she needed to embrace the turbulence that came with it. The door creaked open, revealing the cozy confines of her apartment, a haven where her thoughts could truly unfold. Hey, can you come to my place? Jenna's voice crackled over the phone. I need a whiteboard for this. Sure, let me just grab my notes, Sarah replied, her heart rhythm steadied by purpose. Within moments, she was on her way, clutching her notebook, which felt like a shield against her insecurities. Jenna's apartment buzzed with warm light and familiar clutter. Books, art supplies, and remnants of half-finished projects greeted her like old friends. "There you are. Sit," she urged, clearing off a space as she prepared for a brainstorming session. That kinetic energy filled the room almost instantly, stimulating Sarah's creative flow. They sketched ideas, their voices rising and falling as they explored the unknown territory of their project. Jenna, ever the optimist, filled the air with enthusiasm. "Imagine starting with a gripping urban legend like the Jersey Devil. It'll hook listeners immediately." Sarah found herself swept away by the rhythm of Jenna's ideas spilling forth, but lurking within her was a small voice of doubt. How do I differentiate myself? Could she offer anything new? Let us infuse your personal touch stories about how these legends intertwine with your life. Your connection with them is what makes it unique, Jenna pressed that a spark ignited within Sarah. The thought had never occurred to her. The stories she'd clung to for comfort, those whispered conversations in the dark, could be woven into the fabric of their podcast. She realized daring to show her vulnerability could forge a deeper connection with their audience. In that moment of realization, she felt the warmth of a newfound potential. You're right. I can't just recite facts. I need to share what these legends mean to me. The frantic scrawl of her pen scorched across the board as they forged a path forward, every word a step away from trepidation and toward authenticity. Yet, as the excitement surged, another barrier loomed large in the distance. She would have to summon the courage to reveal her deepest emotions to the world, exposing herself to the possibility of critique from strangers. Ready for this? Jenna eyed her knowingly, and the unspoken question hung uncomfortably. Not yet, Sarah admitted, her heart racing again at the thought of being entirely exposed. Jenna's supportive gaze urged her on. We'll figure this out together. That offer provided reassurance, but another nagging thought lingered. What if she failed? What kind of tumult would follow disappointment, not just for her but for Jenna too? Negativity pulled at her as she packed up. As she drove home, the shadows of anxiety crept back in, whispering doubts about who she was and what she could truly achieve. But she steeled herself, reflecting on how Jenna's faith in her creativity had served as a catalyst for growth. Sarah parked, her pulse still pounding, feeling a swirl of exhilaration and fear that perhaps she was finally taking ownership of her narrative. Yet, with every step toward her doorstep, she asked herself if she was truly prepared to face the world unadorned. Unlocking her door, she resolved to embrace this transformative journey. Tomorrow would be pivotal. Her gaze fell on her phone. Another message had appeared. This one from a listener who had picked up on her podcast teasers, intrigued yet apprehensive. What will this comment hold? Positive or harsh? She wondered, a deep breath escaping as she read the words. With uncertainty swirling within her once more, she felt a shift in resolve, sensing that tomorrow's unveiling might be more significant than she'd imagined. The morning light streamed through Sarah's window, illuminating her cluttered apartment. She sat at her kitchen table, coffee in hand, and stared blankly at the notebook spread before her. The once inviting pages, now filled with crooked lines and chaotic scrawls, mirrored her tangled thoughts. Today was the day. The day she would record her first podcast episode, but the thought made her stomach twist into knots. She took a sip of her coffee, hoping the warmth would settle her nerves, but the act provided little relief. Sarah's mind raced back to Jenna's words, sparking with excitement but laced with her own fears. Would she really be able to integrate her personal stories in a way that resonated? Or would her attempts feel clumsy against the vibrant fabric of Jenna's ideas? With a deep sigh, Sarah opened her notebook and began to write. As she scribbled potential topics, she struggled to articulate her emotions surrounding the urban legends they would explore. She wanted to connect with listeners, not merely entertain them with retellings. Bursting through the pages was an urge to take ownership of this project, to tap into the parts of her life that made her who she was. She quickly jotted down a tentative outline, the legend of the Jersey Devil, her childhood fears, the solace she found in storytelling. The more she wrote, the clearer her thoughts became. Each word on the page felt like a puzzle piece slowly revealing a picture of her journey. The more personal she got, the more genuine it felt. However, the specter of vulnerability loomed larger than ever. What if listeners judged her stories as trivial? Or worse, dismissed them entirely? Despite the anxiety, she pressed on, channeling her fear into a driving force for clarity. The afternoon approached, and she could no longer postpone her planned recording session with Jenna. As she tucked her notebook underneath her arm, Sarah glanced at herself in the hallway mirror. Her reflection looked back at her, mixing determination with an underlying trepidation. She barely recognized the woman who had taken a risk on herself and her creativity. On the drive to Jenna's, she rehearsed snippets of her intro, trying to grasp the rhythm of her thoughts as they melded into words. Each repetition felt like a step closer to the edge of her comfort zone. Yet, with every moment, doubts swirled in the back of her mind, echoing reminders of her past failures. Sarah parked, took a breath to stabilize her shaking hands, and stepped out, determined to confront her fears head-on. Arriving at Jenna's place, she feasted her eyes on the freshly arranged whiteboard filled with colorful notes and ideas. Jenna greeted her with an uncontainable smile, radiating an electric energy. "I've been thinking about how we can make our intro pop," Jenna said enthusiastically. "What if we incorporate ambient sounds to immerse the audience right from the start?" Sarah nodded, excitement mixing with her anxiety. They brainstormed furiously, every new suggestion feeding the thrill of collaborating with a kindred spirit. But as she turned to present her drafts, a wave of self-consciousness rolled over her. Would her personal narrative drown in the grandeur of Jenna's vibrant suggestions? "Let us hear what you have," Jenna prompted, her eyes encouraging, and suddenly, under the weight of that gaze, Sarah felt a surge of boldness wash over her. She cleared her throat and began her presentation with a shaky voice. "So, I wanted to start with a glimpse of my childhood, how fear drove me to seek out these legends." As the room filled with her voice, Sarah poured her heart into the words. Each sentence unfastened threads of experience, weaving them into a tapestry of vulnerability. She recounted the comfort she drew from tales like the Jersey Devil's, memories of huddling with her family during storms, sharing whispers about the ghostly figure in the woods. Jenna listened closely, her smile unwavering, and Sarah grew bolder with each story. It was a conversation between friends, yet as she reached the climax of her story, it struck her, she was no longer just telling a story, she was reclaiming her identity. But just as she felt the surge of triumph mount within her, the sound of her phone chimed again, a stark reminder of uncertainty. A message from the same listener, now more of a devoted follower than before, arrived. "Your stories are incredible. But what if they don't connect with everyone?" The impact of the question pulled Sarah back into the shadows of self-doubt. Did she truly have the courage to lay her soul bare when the judgment of strangers loomed large? Would the transformation she felt within her be enough to withstand scrutiny from the outside world? As she glanced at Jenna's eager eyes, Sarah confronted the deeper truth hidden behind the listener's comment. Vulnerability could not guarantee acceptance, and yet, it was the only path to authenticity. It was a crossroads, and the choice rested solely in her hands. "Are you okay?" Jenna asked, sensing a shift in the atmosphere. The moment crystallized for Sarah, the reckoning of fear against the potential of growth. She had the power to define this experience, and with a renewed sense of determination, she replied, "I think it's time to embrace whatever comes next." But the question loomed, would she show up and face it all, or retreat into the shadows? As she glanced at the board, filled with dreams and her newfound voice, she felt a charge of potential crackle through her. The time had come, she had to decide. Would she step into the light or cower in uncertainty? The answer rested just beyond the horizon of her fears, but a question remained. Who would she truly become when she put her authentic self into the chaotic and critical world waiting on the other side? Sarah took a deep breath, grounding herself in the moment. Invoking the weight of her decision, she shook off the tremors of doubt and committed to letting her voice be heard. As she embarked on this new chapter of her podcast, she understood that authenticity would be the key to forging connections with her audience, connections rooted not in perfection but in shared experiences. "Let us do this," she said, igniting her own resolve. Suddenly, the room felt larger, filled with potential rather than judgment. With Jenna standing beside her, the atmosphere pulsed with creative energy. Sarah spoke fervently, sharing ideas about the explorations they would undertake, how urban legends often reflected societal fears and aspirations. Patterns emerged as she began linking her childhood experiences with broader themes that could resonate universally. "We can delve into why the Jersey Devil remains so captivating," she mused, pacing slightly. "What does this legend tell us about fear, family dynamics, or even the impact of our environments?" Each thought sparked another, and soon they were throwing around ideas that excited her, a far cry from the paralysis she had felt earlier. Jenna's enthusiasm fanned the flames of Sarah's creativity, urging her to dive deeper into specific stories. Together, they brainstormed segments. Would they weave personal anecdotes into mythological discussions to establish a richer narrative? Every potential direction felt empowering, dissolving the fear that had threatened to suffocate her creativity. In that space of safety and collaboration, Sarah discovered the power of her voice, how her innermost thoughts could translate into something meaningful for others. She was no longer just a participant but an architect of stories that sought to bridge personal and communal experiences. Yet shadows of uncertainty still flickered at the edges of her mind. What if I fail? What if no one connects? The questions remained relentless. But within that uncertainty flickered promise and opportunity. She considered, what if her so-called failure was merely a stepping stone? Each experience shared could be a lesson not only for her but for her audience as well. Their growth was often born from struggles, not just successes. Bonding over fear could reveal a profound sense of community, even in the act of storytelling. "I think we need to crank up the emotional stakes," Jenna suggested, eyes alight with inspiration. "We should be raw, unfiltered." Sarah felt electric. Raw emotion, after all, was what she had sought from the start. This was her chance to invite others into her world, to share how legends shaped her life, her fears, and her joys. It was as much about her journey of self-discovery as it was about the tales themselves. No more hiding behind the facade of perfect storytelling. Authenticity was key. Emboldened by this realization, she agreed. "Let us take the plunge. I want to explore why legends like the Jersey Devil are more than stories, they're reflections of what we can't articulate ourselves." With her heart pounding in her chest, she felt a sense of purpose wash over her. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue across the room, Sarah knew it was time to record. Jenna helped set the equipment, laughter peppering the preparation process, each sound reinforcing Sarah's rising confidence. They positioned the microphones, buzzing with latent energy, and Sarah's fingers hovered over the button. But as she closed her eyes for a moment, the familiar panic clawed back at her, whispering doubts. What if the recording captured her insecurities instead of her strength? What if her stories didn't translate? The stakes felt high. "Ready?" Jenna's voice pulled her from the brink of uncertainty. Sarah met her gaze and nodded firmly. The internal struggle began to dissipate. Once they started, she realized she held the narrative, hers and the legends they were about to unearth. "Let us do this." As the recording commenced, Sarah's voice flowed confidently. She embraced the vulnerability that came with exposure. Yet, amid the excitement, surged an underlying tension, a thought she couldn't shake. Would her authenticity resonate, or would it merely echo in the void? The journey of self-discovery had just begun, but each word she spoke wove her closer to her audience. Still, the clock ticked ominously in her mind. This was her chance, yet her past lingered in the backdrop, ready to remind her of missteps. Would she falter under pressure, or stand tall against the haunting specters of self-doubt? The moment of truth was fast approaching, but Sarah knew one indisputable fact: she was ready to confront whatever came next. Would she thrive in vulnerability, or would her fears bind her? As the final seconds of the recording ticked down, she felt her pulse quicken. Everything hung in the balance. The final recording wrapped, and the silence settled like a gentle fog across the room. Sarah stared at the blinking light on the recording device, her heart thudding in her chest, a mix of exhilaration and trepidation sweeping over her. She felt as if she had just emerged from an intense cocoon of vulnerability. The weight of doubt had lifted, giving way to a newfound clarity. Through those moments in the booth, she had chosen authenticity over fear. The stories flowed naturally, weaving her childhood fears and encounters with urban legends into a narrative of resilience. This was a stark contrast to the apprehensive girl who had anxiously scrolled through social media posts seeking approval. She had conquered self-doubt, transforming it into a source of strength. As Jenna punched stop on the recorder, a wave of acknowledgement washed over them, an unspoken understanding of the achievement that lay before them. "You did it, Sarah," Jenna said, her eyes gleaming. "You shared your truth." "Yeah, I did," Sarah replied, a grin breaking across her face. The sense of accomplishment surged through her, filling the once empty spaces she had reserved for self-criticism. No longer the invisible dreamer, she felt like a storyteller stepping into the spotlight, but achievements came with consequences. The fear that had shadowed her journey still lingered, reminding her of potential backlash. Yet Sarah realized now that vulnerability was not weakness but rather a powerful tool for connection. She was ready to face what came next. Later, settled in the comforting chaos of her home, Sarah reflected on a crucial shift she had undergone. The burdens of her family's skepticism faded, replaced by a steeled resolve. It was her right to define her narrative, even if it seemed unconventional. For once, she saw herself not merely as the family dreamer but as a creator, a daughter of stories that might resonate with others who had walked similar paths. Days passed, and with the release of the podcast episode, Sarah's anticipation transformed into action. Comments flooded in, and although some were critical, the overwhelming majority echoed empathy and enthusiasm. Her audience resonated, sharing their fears and experiences, finding solace in her journey. It was a validation that wrapped around her like a warm embrace, proving her voice could reach far beyond the confines of tradition and expectation. One morning, a notification pinged, a message from Jenna lit up her screen. "Sarah, I think we should submit our podcast for a local storytelling award." The idea sent a ripple of excitement through Sarah. An award. She felt a mixture of thrill and disbelief at the prospect. However, the nod of recognition loomed, tempting her to grasp an achievement that was distinctly her own. It represented not only validation from the community but also the courage it took to step into the light. This was hers to own. "Absolutely. Let us do it," Sarah typed back, her heart filled with a boldness she had never before recognized. As the weeks rolled out, their podcast received accolades and features in local media, buzz building around Sarah's unique insight into urban legend narratives. Her brother, Thomas, surprisingly reached out, expressing his newfound respect for her work, an unexpected shift that deepened their relationship. Her parents, too, began to embrace the exhilarating passion of their daughter, longing to hear her stories. When Sarah walked into the award ceremony, nerves danced inside her, but they were accompanied by something newfound: confidence. The recognition she had yearned for was palpable, but it wasn't the awards or applause driving her forward, it was the assurance that she was valid and worthy by her own standards. Amidst the crowd, as her name was called, she stepped onto the stage, heart racing. With a collective cheer resonating through the hall, Sarah took a deep breath and smiled. This moment was a testament to her transformation. "I am proud of the stories we tell," she began, her voice steady. "It's those narratives that shape us and create connections beyond expectations." With every word, she felt the weight of her past drop away, revealing the phoenix she had become through her storytelling journey. As Sarah stepped off the stage, her heart was light. The confidence she had cultivated was an integral part of her identity now, intertwined with her ability to share authentically. Fulfillment surged within her, transcending the disappointment of earlier comparisons and family pressures. This chapter had closed, yet a new journey awaited her. She was not just an observer in her life anymore, she was an author, conquering fears, and embracing the fullness of her narrative. The time to reclaim her story had arrived, and she had proven, to herself and others, that there truly was power in vulnerability. Now, dear viewers, this is your moment to act. You need to subscribe now to our channel to catch the latest exclusive emotional stories. We promise you'll want to be added to our community. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm that gets these real stories out there, ensuring they reach those who need them the most. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who could benefit from this journey of transformation. Let us spread the power of storytelling together. Your support matters because every story shared could inspire another.